Hello out there, all you e-learning fans. Here is our next topic today. We are going to discuss multiplication and division with fractions. Only these fractions are going to have polynomials in them, and that's why we call them rational expressions. So, big question. Do you remember how to deal with fractions? So let's just talk about this first one and recall some different ways we can simplify or multiply two fractions. So I like to remind you guys first, when we multiply, we could just multiply straight across the top, straight across the bottom. And I could multiply first and write 72 here, and 3 times 16 is 48. Or what I can do when we simplify fractions, we look for common factors of the numerator and the denominator, and we cancel them out. So let's look ahead and see some clues. I have 8, I have 16. Well, 16 equals 8 times 2. And then I see that I have 3 and I have 9, and 9 equals 3 times 3. So if I rewrote this, instead of 8 times 9, I wrote 8 times 3 times 3 in my numerator. That's the exact same thing as this. And the denominator, I could write 3. Instead of 16, I can write times 8 times 2. Now, we probably wouldn't have done that because we have some familiarity with simplifying fractions, with finding the greatest common factor, with dividing those out, with canceling, however you want to think about it. But I wrote this out because this is how we're going to do it with polynomials. Because now once we see this, we can say, hey, I see some common factors in the numerator and denominator that I can cancel. 8 divided by 8 is 1. 3 divided by 3 is also 1. And all I'm left with then is my fraction 3/2. So that's the strategy we're going to use today with polynomials instead of with numbers. Now when we have division, this is where we have to change to multiply by the reciprocal. So let's write here our reminder. Multiply by the reciprocal. All right, so all we're going to do is we're going to keep this first fraction the same. We don't change that. We change that division sign to multiplication, and we flip this guy to its reciprocal. And once we do that, we have a multiplication problem, and we do the exact same thing that we just did. So again, I could multiply 3 times 2 and put 6 up there, or I could break down that 8, and I say, well, I know that 8 is 4 times 2, and I don't really need this one, but let's put it, why not, so you guys aren't wondering where it went later. And now we can say, well, there's a 2 on the top, 2 on the bottom. We can cancel those out, and then we can clearly see what's left on the top is 3, and 4 times 1 on the bottom gives us 4. Okay, so there's multiplication division. We're going to do the exact same thing with polynomials. So you guys will see this isn't a big deal. All right, so you can see yesterday, right here, we were just focusing on one rational expression and simplifying that rational expression. So to do this, we're going to break that top part down into its factors, and I'm going to set up my big X. I'm going to factor that. So factors of -10 that add up to -3. Let's say I could do -5 times +2, and I can go straight to my binomial factors because that x squared does not have a coefficient other than 1. So when you guys see that x squared by itself, that's when we can go straight from these side values to these binomials. So there's the numerator. Denominator is still x plus 2. And now, just like we did above, we see that we have two factors that are exactly the same. So x plus 2 over x plus 2 equals 1. Those cancel out, and we are left with just this nice binomial in the numerator, which is x minus 5. That's our final answer there. Make sure that looks like a minus. All right, so here's what we're going to do today, and this is just kind of your preview. All right, I'm not going to work these all out in these tiny boxes because we're going to do a bunch and you're going to practice some too. But this is what we're looking at today to give you guys an idea where we're going. This doesn't look that different. Notice this right here, boom, is that same thing right there. So we could simplify that first. We could simplify this. We can factor the whole thing, okay? So what I like to do is to factor everything. Okay, then I'm going to cancel. We look for things that are the same on the top and the bottom, then we cancel. When we see that division, switch the second rational to the reciprocal. And I recommend you guys doing that right away so you don't have to worry about moving anything, and you know you're always simplifying with the top and the bottom. So this one's going to flip to its reciprocal, it's going to change to multiplication, and I'm going to rewrite the whole thing before I start factoring and canceling. So there's my first term, stays exactly the same, change to multiplication. Now I flip to the reciprocal, so 3x cubed comes up plus 6x squared, and on the bottom, then 2x squared minus 50. Okay, and then I'm going to factor everything, and I'm going to cancel. So yeah, there's some work here, but conceptually, there's not a whole lot going on. We're doing a lot of algebra. We're doing a lot of rewriting, simplifying, factoring, all that good stuff. Okay, so I'm going to do the odds here for you guys, and I'll leave these for you to practice, and I will post the solutions on the drive for you guys to practice these. Homework will be posted separately tomorrow or today, and we'll post solutions for that tomorrow and have a Google Hangouts for us to talk about. All right, let's go with this first one. Now I'm going to use the same kind of strategy that I used with those fractions at the beginning. Is I'm going to look at it and say, okay, I have a 6 here, I have an 8 here. Okay, I know that 6 and 8 have a common factor of 2. So I'm just going to do 6, change it to 2 times 3. And then I'm going to do C times C, so I'm multiplying on the top. All right. And actually, before I even do that, let me just break down this 15. And I see the 5 down there, so I'm going to break out a 5. So 15 changes to 5 times 3. So see, all I did was break down the 6 into factors, break down the 15 to factors. And now there's no C's on the bottom, so on the top I'm just going to do C times C, C squared, and then D squared. Okay, this is review from before with our exponent rules. So now we have 5 times 8 on the bottom. Okay, now notice I don't have an 8 on the top, but I do have a 5 on the top. So let's break down that 8 instead of rewriting it. All right, so now I'm going to break down that 8 into 2 times 4 so I can cancel this 2. And remember, this is just one way that you guys can do this. You can totally simplify these other ways as well. I'm just doing it like this so you guys can see me clearly canceling things out. So there's the 5, there's the 8, and then I have a, right, and I have a D. Okay, so now we're going to start the simplifying part. Okay, so we're going to cancel whatever we can. All right, let's go ahead. I like using the highlighter here so you guys can still see what we had left. All right, the 5's cancel. The 2's cancel. 3 and 3 can't simplify with the 4. C and A, that's it. But I do have a D squared. So remember, this is D squared over D. We're canceling at 1D. So this is 2 minus 1. So that square cancels out that D on the bottom. Okay, remember our properties of powers. We subtract the exponents. Wherever we have more, that's where they're left. So now look at what I have left on the top. I have 3 times 3 is 9. Okay, I have C squared. And I cancel out 1D, so I'm left with D to the first. I have the 4, and I have the A. And there we go. All right. All right, let's do number 3 with our division. So first thing we're going to do, when we see that division sign change to multiplication, flip this guy over. So the first one stays exactly the same. Don't change anything. Don't touch it. keep that the same so we can focus on this first step. Changing to multiplication. 6c squared d squared goes on the top. 5m to the fifth goes on the bottom. All right, now we can start our process of simplifying again. So look for our clues. I'm going to start with the coefficients. So 10, okay, I see a 3, I can't simplify that, but I have a 5 here. So I'm going to break that 10 down, and remember I'm going straight across the top, straight across the bottom. 10 I'm going to break down to 2 times 5. 6, I see the 3 on the bottom, so I'm going to break that 6 down to 2 times 3. Okay, I have an m, a k squared, a c squared, a d squared. I can't simplify any of those, so I'm just going to write them all. The order doesn't matter here, guys, as long as they're all up there in the numerator. Okay, there we go. So there's our numerator. Our denominator now, we have the 3. I'm going to put the 5 up here too. Okay, and then I have c squared times d times m to the fifth. All right. So let's start canceling some things out. All right. Let's see, 5s cancel. Boom. And is that it? 3s. There we go. All right. C squared, and I have a c squared. So those whole things go. Keep track of your powers when you do this, guys. I think that's the one danger of me doing it this way. All right. I'm going to switch to my pen, and I'm going to put this power in here again so you guys remember property of powers. Remember, this is d to the first. This is m to the first. So when I'm simplifying my d's, I'm doing 2 minus 1, and then 1 left over on the top, okay? The k is the only one with the m's. 5 minus 1 is 4, and that's going to go on the bottom. All right, so let's go ahead and rewrite what we have here and get our final answer. So 2 times 2, 4. M, 1 minus 5 is going to be negative 4. So I like to think about it this way. 5 minus 1 is 4. That's going to go on the bottom. Cancel, cancel, cancel. Let's put our m to the fourth then. Okay, so that canceled out this m. K squared, there's no k squared to combine with, so that stays a k squared. C squareds canceled out completely. D squared, 2 minus 1 is 1, and that goes up on the top. So we can just write d, or if you want, you can put that d to the first power. And that's it. All right, so there's multiplication and division. All right, take a second, make sure that makes sense, try out 2 and 4, and again, I'll post those solutions on the drive for you guys to check out. All right, let's flip to that next page. And again, I'm just going to do half of these so you guys have a little more practice to go to, and you can check those on the drive. All right, this looks almost exactly the same as that last one. Our next page, notice we start getting into some polynomials here, so this is going to be a little bit different. I'm just going to do one more of these for you guys. I'll do one more division. So I'm going to jump to 7. Let's do this guy. Looks interesting. Okay. Remember, the first thing we're going to do is change, when we see division, we're going to change the reciprocal. So 16mt squared times, on the bottom, 21a to the fourth b cubed. And then we have 7a squared b squared. And on the bottom, 24m cubed. All right, so we're going to multiply across the top. We're going to multiply across the bottom. But let's break these down into our factors as we do this. All right, so I see 16 on the top. I see 24 on the bottom. Their greatest common factor is 8. If you want to divide that out now, go ahead and do it. If you want to break it down like we've been doing, I can just write this as 2 times 8. Okay, and then I'm going to go ahead with my variables, times m, times t squared, times, I'll throw the 7 out in front to keep all my constants. So there's that 7, a squared, times b squared. Denominator, okay, 21. I know that 7 goes into 21, so I'm going to break that down to 3 times 7. All right, let's do the 24 right away as well. 8 goes into that, so that's 3 times 8 when I break that down, times a to the fourth, times b cubed, times m cubed. All right, do a quick double check, make sure that we got everything in the numerator, everything in the denominator before we start canceling things out. All right, I know you guys love this part to cross things out. Make sure we don't lose anything, make sure we had everything to begin with. All right, so let's see, I got my 7s, 8 and 8s, good. All right, now we can start talking about those variables in a second. Let's go ahead and start writing our final answer out with our variables here. All right, so left on the top then I have, sorry about that, 2. Now I have m to the first. On the bottom, I'm going to put that 9 right away. M to the first over m to the third. So it's 3 minus 1 is 2, and that's going to be left on the bottom. Wherever we have more, that's where it's left over. So there I simplified my m's. Now let's go to the t. Oh, that's the only t, so that just stays right there on top. A squared, I have a to the fourth on the bottom, so 4 minus 2 is 2. And since I had more on the bottom to start with, that stays on the bottom. 4 minus 2 is 2 on the bottom. All right, then we have our b's, b squared on the top, b cubed on the bottom. 3 minus 2 is 1, and that's left over on the bottom. So again, you can put that 1 up there if you want, but you don't have to. And there's our final answer. Let's get that box so it's not crossing it out. All right. So notice those were all monomials, no pluses or minuses. Okay, with addition and subtraction, it's going to be a little different. That's going to be using a lot of the skills that we were working on yesterday. So let's go ahead and do, we have 9, we have 10, 11, 12. Let's do a couple of these, and let's start with multiplication, because it's really the same thing, it's just one less step. All right, the first thing I'm going to do always is I'm going to put parentheses around here. Because remember, don't try to cancel things when you have the pluses and minus. That whole thing is a factor, so put parentheses around that to remind yourself. All right, so I'm going to start factoring right away. That's the first thing I want to do. So I'm going to factor. Anytime I see something with a GCF, something with a quadratic or a cubic, I'm going to factor. All right, so on the top, when I factor, I still got this k minus 3. And then I'm multiplying straight across. That 1 minus k squared is a difference of squares. So that factors to 1 minus k and 1 plus k. On the bottom, we have k plus 1. I already factored, but we need to factor this, so let's use our big X. And positive 3 on the top, negative 4 on the bottom. So to get that, negative 1 times negative 3. And again, since this is just k squared, no coefficient, okay, we can go straight to our factors and write them as k minus 1 and k minus 3. All right, now once we factor that, here's the fun part. Simplifying, look at what's the same. K minus 3, k minus 3. Those cancel out. K plus 1, 1 plus k. Those are the same thing. All right. Now, here's what's interesting about this. I notice now what's left is not exactly the same, right? 1 minus k and k minus 1 are not exactly the same thing, so I can't cancel them out. But think about what we notice here, and what one of the skills we were working on the last 2 days was recognizing when we see opposites. So notice the 1's positive, the 1's negative. The k is negative, the k is positive. So here's what we can do. We can take this and we can factor out a negative 1. So what's going to end up happening, check this out. I'm going to put it right over here. Here's the negative 1. When I take out that negative 1, that's going to change the signs. So it changes that to a negative 1, makes that negative. Changes that k to a positive. And on the bottom, we still have this k minus 1. And now these two are the same thing. Negative 1, positive k, positive k. So we can cancel them out. So even though they didn't look the same, we can make them the same. And what's awesome is that now everything there canceled except for this negative 1. And there's our answer. So we got to look for those negatives. We got to look for factors. Anything we see that we can cancel out, we go ahead and cancel. All right, I'm going to do one more for you guys. Let's see. 10 division, that looks pretty easy to factor. I'm trying to think of what else may look a little more difficult. Yeah, you guys would probably want to see 12, I'm guessing. So let's go ahead and do 12. It's another division one. It looks a little more complex. Okay. But again, it's just practicing our factoring. So first thing I'm going to do when I see that division, I'm going to change that second one over to its reciprocal. Keep that first rational the same, exactly the same, m cubed plus 343. Change to multiplication. Okay, this denominator comes up when we switch to our reciprocal. This one comes down. All right, and now we have our multiplication problem. So now we got a lot of factoring to do. Every single part here needs to be factored. All right, do one part at a time. Don't feel intimidated. Give yourself some space on this because you're going to need it. We got a lot of things to factor. So first thing, 4 and 18, I can factor out of 2. M squared and m, I can factor out of m. What's left? 2m minus 9. Anytime I get binomials left, I'm happy because I can usually find a way to factor those out. All right, let's factor this numerator right here. That's a 2. That's odd. I can't factor out that 2, so I'm going to have to do this the long way. So this might take me a little bit of time. If you guys want to do guess and check, go for it. 2 times negative 63 is going to give me negative 126, and then positive 5 in the bottom. Now again, this might take us a little time, so I'm going to pause for a second and get my calculator. All right, I got my calculator. Go ahead and get yours. I need factors of 126 to add up to 5. Now I know that negative 126, to get that, I need one positive and one negative, and their difference will end up being 5. So I'm going to start with things that are kind of big as I check. Like, I know 2 goes in, so 2 and 63 aren't going to work, but I'm going to start writing these down because I want you guys to see my thoughts. So 2 and 63, I'm looking at the differences. Okay, those are too far apart. 126, I'm going to jump to like trying 4 and see what I get. 126 divided by 4. 31.5, that doesn't work. 126 divided by 6, let's try that, is 21. Okay, I'm getting close, and I can kind of use these as clues here. So if I see there's 21 there, I know 7's a factor of 21. So I know 7's going to go in. Let's try 126 divided by 14, because I know 7 goes in. And that is going to work out really nicely. Okay, so again, this was the trick I used. I tried to start with 6. I saw that 7 goes into 21, 7 goes into 63, so I tried 14 because that's a multiple of 7, and that worked out really nicely to give me that difference of 5. So 14 and 9, to get that positive 5, I need the 9 to be negative. All right, now again, I got to do a little more work here because this 2, so this is where we factor by grouping. I'm going to keep working down here on the side. 2m squared, bring my 14m plus negative 9m minus 63, and then I'm going to group my first 2. I'm going to group my second 2, group, factor out our common terms, 2m, and what's left is going to be m plus 7, negative 9, and m plus 7. Beautiful. That worked out so nicely. And there's my factors, 2m minus 9 and m plus 7. And you guys might have been able to get that quickly with guess and check. So if you can, please use guess and check, okay? So now there's this part. I'm just going to take that, I factored it, and I'm going to put it right up there next to it because everything here is being multiplied in that numerator. 2m minus 9 and then m plus 7. Okay, there we go. Now we factor the denominator. Oh, check this out. Sum of cubes. Got some good questions on this today. Thank you guys for calling in and getting into the Google Meet to ask your questions. All right, so remember, their pattern goes like this. This is m cubed plus 343, pretty sure is 7 cubed. I got my calculator right here, so I'm going to go ahead and check that. And it is 7 cubed. So when we factor that sum of cubes, the first one is a binomial with those two terms. And the sign is going to be the same. So it's just m plus 7. Okay. Now when I do my trinomial, I'm going to take the first term, m squared. Now my first sign is going to be opposite what I started with, so it's minus. And then product of my two terms, 7 times m. And now this one is always a plus because it's 7 times 7, which is 49. And there's our sum of cubes property. Beautiful. And now this one, thankfully I got a nice easy one now. I'm going to switch colors so you can see that as kind of a separate part that I have to factor. I'm going to pull out that m, and I'm just left with m minus 6. All right, there we go. Now the canceling fest can begin. So let's see what we have that's the same. All right, I see anything? 2m minus 9. I got 2m minus 9s on the top. Wow, it would have been, if I hadn't had to switch that with division, I would have been able to cancel those. I don't see anything that I can cancel. Oh wait, there we go. M plus 7, m plus 7. Oh, and here we go. We can do this m with this m because they don't have a plus or minus next to them. So both of those can be canceled. Okay, if we had another number down here on the outside, we could try to simplify with that too. But that looks like all we can do right now. So let's just rewrite our final answer. So what's left on the top is 2, and we can make this look a little simpler because those are the same, right? So instead of writing 2m minus 9 minus 2m minus 9, let's just write 2m minus 9 squared. And then on the bottom, we just have this trinomial, m squared minus 7m plus 49, and this binomial m minus 6. And there we go. Now you might be saying that doesn't look that much simpler, but considering we started out with two larger rationals that both had things that need to be factored, this looks a lot nicer than what we started with. All right, I will get the solutions for these other ones up for you guys on the drive. Enjoy the video and get started with the homework.